Hey guys, Happy New Year! So I kind of just want to jump right into the case that we will be covering today because there is a lot to unpack. This is probably one of the most bizarre cases that I've ever heard of, and it's kind of up there with the Brandon Swanson case. So this case focuses on Andrea Knabel, who disappeared in the early morning hours of August 13th, 2019. Andrea's story stood out to me for many reasons, but the biggest being was that in her spare time, she would volunteer for a group called Missing in America, which is a volunteer organization that searches for missing people. And then one summer night, seemingly out of nowhere, she disappears herself. So I had the privilege of talking with Andrea's younger sister, Erin, who is letting me share some of what we talked about. So throughout this video, you'll be hearing a few voice recordings from her, which I think is really important as she was one of the closest people to Andrea. There are also a lot of mistruths being spread about this case that need to be cleared up. So with that being said, let's get into it. At the time, Andrea was a 37-year-old mom of 2 young boys, and leading up to her disappearance, life wasn't the kindest to her. She had recently been laid off from her job as an analyst at Humana, and of course, being a mom, that's always stressful. And then the January before she went missing, Andrea was with her 2 sons driving when all of a sudden her car broke down. She was forced to leave her car parked on the side of the road and get a different ride home, but when she returned the next day to pick up her car, it was totaled. So there's some confusion on how exactly that happened, but it's speculated that a snowplow possibly ran into it. But it was reported as a hit and run. And if things couldn't get any worse, Andrea had recently been evicted after the boyfriend that she had been living with at the time, one day out of the blue, just packed up his belongings and left. He even told Andrea happy eviction on his way out. So with no job or car and now struggling with a place to live, Andrea decided that it was in her son's best interest to temporarily live with their fathers, who have different dads. During the day though, Andrea and her sister Erin would go and pick up the boys to spend some time with them and then drop them back off with their fathers after. At the time of her disappearance, Andrea was living in her mother's house on Chickadee Lane in the Audubon Park neighborhood of Louisville, Kentucky, which I've been told is a pretty safe neighborhood. She lived in the house with her younger sister Sarah and Sarah's fiance Ethan. Sarah and Ethan were doing some renovation work on the house, and at the time, Andrea's mom didn't live in the house with them. So fast forward, on August 12, 2019, at around 9:20 p.m., Andrea and Ethan went to a McDonald's on Popular Level Road. At the time, Andrea had some sort of rash break out on her face and was either worried that it may have become infected or was just really bugging her, so she had Ethan drive her to an urgent care on the 3900 block of Dutchman's Lane. Once she was taken care of, Ethan left to go back home. Around 11:22 p.m., Andrea took a lift back to her mom's house. It was at this point that an argument between Andrea and Sarah occurred, which caused Andrea to leave. After speaking with Erin, she was able to clear up what that argument was about. It was no secret that Andrea was struggling mentally, emotionally, and financially, although most of her life wasn't that way. But she had also been hanging around some friends, or more like acquaintances, that were not good people. They would steal from her, amongst many other things, and they even started to come around her mom and sister's house. So of course this worried her family, more specifically Sarah, who voiced her concerns to Andrea. Andrea kind of took this as a personal attack and ended up leaving pretty upset. So she ended up taking another lift to Erin's house on Fincastle Road, which is only a few blocks away. So on that night, Erin had one of her best friends over with all of their kids. When Andrea got to Erin's house, she started crying and venting about the argument that she had with Sarah. Erin tried to comfort her and told her to go inside and relax a bit. So Andrea went inside and washed her face in the upstairs bathroom. To elaborate on Erin's house, at the time, the pipes upstairs were being worked on, so the entire upstairs was basically off use, which made Erin and her kids sleep downstairs on the couch together until things were up and running again. So once Andrea came back downstairs, her nephews were pretty much asleep on the couch. It was a weeknight, and at this point it was around 1:50 in the morning, so Erin offered to drive her back home to just sleep everything off. She was also a bit worried about the types of people that were hanging around Andrea. So her friend stayed to watch over the kids while Erin drove the 2 minutes back to their mom's house to drop Andrea off. She watched Andrea walk her into the back door, which they use as the main door, and then she left. She ended up falling asleep once back at home with her kids, but it wasn't long after that there was a knock at the door. And to her surprise, it was Andrea. She was upset again and asked Erin if she could stay the night, but Erin ended up telling her no. Andrea reportedly cried, turned around, and started the walk back to her mom's house. This is what Erin had to say about the encounter.
I drove myself home. My friend Michelle and her son left and went home. They live like right down the street from me, so it wasn't far. And then my kids were already asleep on the couch, and I kind of like scooted up onto the couch with them and fell asleep.
Okay.
And then not long after that, Andrea knocked on my door, and I opened it. So like I was half asleep, and she was asking me if she could stay. And like this is really literally one of the worst moments in my life. I'll always regret it, not allowing her to stay. I told her I'm sorry. I'm really tired. I have to work the next day, and I told her no, I'm sorry, and she cried and she left. I watched her walk away. After she left my back door, I went to the kitchen window and saw her walking away looking at her phone.
The next morning, Erin sent Andrea a text, but she never responded. A few days went by, but Erin and the rest of her family still hadn't heard from her, which wasn't like her. According to Erin, no matter how mad she got, Andrea would always keep in touch. Things started to get serious for Erin when she reached out to Andrea's best friend Amber, who she thought Andrea could have been staying the night with. Apparently, it was common for Andrea to sometimes spend a few nights with her. But by August 17th, when Amber officially confirmed that Andrea was never with her, Erin officially reported her missing to the Louisville Metro Police Department. During the investigation, police initially thought that something may have happened to Andrea during her walk back to her mom's house that night. But using her laptop, authorities were able to piece together her last known movements via her Google dashboard. It turns out that Andrea actually made it back to her mom's house around 1:54 a.m., and that it appears that the doors were locked and that everyone inside was already asleep, so she couldn't get in. So this is the bizarre part. Not much is known about what Andrea was doing before she disappeared, but it is clear that her phone records show that she was in the vicinity of her mom's house until 3:53 a.m. After this, her phone was turned off and then turned back on very quickly again at 6:31 a.m. before ultimately dying. Because of the short power up before dying, the location is fuzzy, but there are many articles stating that she was still at her mom's house. Because her mom's house was her last known location, it was heavily searched by authorities and forensics, but there was no trace of Andrea or any of her belongings. Authorities even used tracking dogs and UV lights to determine whether or not there was ever a crime scene at the house, but it turned up nothing. Additional phone records showed that Andrea made a few phone calls during her walk back to her mom's house that fateful night. Although almost every article states that she was looking for a ride, after speaking with Erin, she states that those phone calls were actually Andrea looking for someone to continue hanging out with. Authorities have not fully released everyone Andrea called that night, and it's because of this that her family feels that every avenue isn't being fully explored. On top of this, many of Andrea's friends only went by nicknames, so finding them has proven to be difficult. It's also unknown whether Andrea's ex-boyfriend, who left out of the blue just a couple of months prior to her disappearance, has ever been interviewed. This is what Erin had to say about the people hanging around Andrea.
Like, some of these guys would go by nicknames, and that's one thing that has made it hard for us to find these people. Certain ones we have found and talked to, and they lawyered up, or so I don't know if they know stuff or have anything to do with it, or if they have other stuff that they want to hide from us, or if they just don't want to be involved, period. Like, it's hard to know what, why they did what they did. I did give that name to, police, private investigators. Nothing really came of it.
There have been numerous searches for Andrea, but to this day, she and all of her personal belongings she had on her that night, including her phone, have never been found. There's also been a lot of false sightings of Andrea, which have all been thoroughly investigated, but they've all led to dead ends. Tracy Leonard, who is a private investigator and met Andrea through the group Missing in America, has devoted so much of his time in trying to find her. He stated that he's personally done countless interviews and will drop whatever he's doing to go and search for Andrea. According to him, there have been a few good leads, but still no Andrea. Like I mentioned earlier, the Audubon Park neighborhood in Louisville is reportedly pretty safe, so it's shocking to Andrea's family that something like this could happen.
Yeah, so where I live is just outside of Audubon Park, and out of everywhere in the world, it's the only place that I would allow my kids to walk by themselves.
Okay.
Is Audubon Park, and where I live now, on the outside of Audubon Park, I feel extremely safe. Like, I'd walk here any time of the day or night.
Okay.
By myself, perfectly fine. So I wouldn't allow my kids over here because they're townhomes, obviously, but for myself, I feel safe. So
Yeah.
I think it's very unlikely that anything was random. And also, with me living on Sing Castle, even though it's not as safe as Audubon Park, it's a little bit different. Like, my neighbors are across the street from me, there's an elderly man who is retired. He excavated caves. He can tell me about every cave in Kentucky. My neighbor on the other side is a supervisor like me. He's in his 50s. My neighbor on the opposite side is in her 30s like me. She has young children. My classmates that I knew when I was in grade school live a few buildings over. My best friend's mother lives on this street. Like, I could go on. It's all people that I've known for most of my life that live on this street, even though that it's just a bunch of townhomes. Like, this whole neighborhood is home to me. So it just really, it shakes you up.
Erin goes on to say that the people in her neighborhood are so close that they even have a group chat via text message that almost acts as a community watch. Of course, the night Andrea went missing was in the early morning hours of a Tuesday, which unfortunately plays a factor as most people would have probably been asleep. To try and spread Andrea's face and name, the Knabel family went on the Dr. Phil show, but it wasn't the outcome that they'd hoped for. They felt as though Andrea's life right before she went missing was ridiculed and heavily focused on the bad people that she was hanging out with. Rumors that Andrea could have possibly been on hard drugs were going around. And unfortunately, it's because of this that the Knabel family felt that the Dr. Phil show was victim-shaming Andrea. Speculation that Andrea could have possibly had a mental breakdown and walked away from her own life was also a major point in this case, as authorities mentioned that Andrea's family was concerned about her well-being and tried to get her some help, which upset her. However, her family strongly feels that Andrea would not have just walked away from her own life. She loved her two boys more than anything and wouldn't just abandon them. Because Andrea seemingly vanished into thin air, authorities don't want to give out too much information to try and maintain the integrity of the investigation. This has caused Erin and her father to take matters into their own hands. To this day, they still search for Andrea in bushes, homeless camps, and anywhere a tip might take them. They are hopeful that she may still be alive, but Erin stated, quote, "Andrea was determined and stubborn, and if she was still here, she would have been found," end quote.
We've gotten very terrible, sad leads that she's been trafficked and murdered. I don't want to believe that, and until there's some kind of proof that she has been murdered or that she's no longer with us, I'm going to keep hope. And there were some people that gave me rumors and gossip, but when I would say who said that or who were these people that you're talking about that this happened supposedly with, she'd say, "You're smarter than that." Basically, like, I'm not going to snitch on people. We've had one lead that it's traumatized me to even hear it, but one person went into detail about how Andrea was picked up saying, like, "Do you want to come to a party?" She was plied with drugs and attempted trafficking, and she fought them because that's what I feel Andrea would do. It matched her character. She fought them and they murdered her. I don't know if that's true. I hope every day that it's not true, because it was absolutely horrifying what they told us that they put her through.
According to Erin, nothing ever came of the allegation that Andrea had been sold into trafficking, as authorities told her that the woman who gave them this information was unreliable. Since Andrea went missing, her family has fallen victim to hoax calls stating that they have Andrea and will only give her back in exchange for something, but they were all proven to be fake. During their time looking for Andrea, Erin and her father have found that there's a dark side to Louisville that they've never seen before.
Yeah, I mean, my dad, I can't tell you how many times people have tried to run him off the road just because he was driving a Z4 in a bad part of town. Like, he was driving, he ended up getting a different car so that he would blend in better. But
Wow.
Just crazy things have happened because of this, and I've seen a different side of the city I live in. It's not what I thought it was, and there's a very dark side to Louisville.
The Knabel family has come under a lot of judgment for their last interactions that they had with Andrea, which is something they think about every single day.
I think something that a lot of people don't realize is that, like, they'll say things like, "You're terrible. I can't believe you told her to walk home in the dark. Why didn't you let her stay with you?" Like, I'll see that over and over again. And what they don't understand is that I judge myself way worse than they ever could. And everything that they're saying, like, I've thought it over and over again for the past it's been 2 years and I think 4 months now. So everything that they're saying is, like, just what's already been repeated in my head so many times. So if I would have known that me telling her not to stay with me could have caused her to go missing, I would have quit my job and told her to stay in my room and don't leave until I knew she was safe. Like, I would have
Yeah.
done absolutely everything I possibly could if I would have known this was going to be the outcome. But I truly thought it was just like any other night.
Erin and her family have never given up hope that they will one day find Andrea. Erin described Andrea as outgoing, an extrovert, extremely smart, and an amazing aunt. Before she even had kids of her own, she would pick up her nephews for fun sleepovers. Andrea was the oldest and would often give Erin makeovers and let her borrow cute clothes for whenever she wanted to go out. Although 3 years apart, Erin and Andrea actually shared the same birthday.
Andrea is 3 years older than me, and Andrea and I have always been very, very close. I think I told you I was born on her 3rd birthday, and
Yeah.
she told me I was the best birthday present she's ever had.
When I heard Erin say that, that kind of broke my heart a little bit, but I wanted to include it because it really shows the kind of relationship they had. While it's still a mystery of what happened to Andrea that summer night, Erin and her family have dedicated social media outlets to help keep her memory alive. There's a Facebook page called Where's Andrea Knabel that is run by Erin that you can join for updates on this case. If you're wondering what you can do to help, you can also join Andrea's Angels over Facebook Messenger, which is essentially a group chat created by Erin that also gives updates, but will also give you a chance to help volunteer in searches for Andrea and things of that nature. If you want to join, all you need to do is send Erin Knabel a message over Facebook and she can add you. I'll also be linking a GoFundMe down below that is still active for Andrea's case. The donations help fund ongoing searches. If you have any information regarding the disappearance of Andrea Knabel, please call either the lead private investigator on her case at 502-618-9337 or the Louisville Metro Police Department at 502-574-7120. If you guys have any specific case recommendations for me, feel free to leave them in the comments below. I'll see you next time, but until then, stay safe.